Good evening. Welcome to the second presentation of group number 3. Let's start defining what are bilingualism and multilingualism. Both refer to the coexistence, contact, interaction of different languages. Multilingualism arises for many reasons: immigrants, settlers or invaders, imperialists, and colonial expansion. Languages can expand also because of cultural and educational motivations. That is the degree to which a group of people is open to use a language. For instance, French people are more possessive of their language. An example is the Mission Civilisatrice, that was an intervention in which they pretend to teach the language to those who didn't speak it, but they were extremely jealous in protecting its purity. English has not been treated in the same guarded way. On the contrary, there are books and journals about new Englishes and world Englishes, so English is becoming internationalized. This contact of languages was explained by Edwards through a framework that begins with the adaptation of geographical scheme that makes three basic distinctions: minority languages, type of connections among speakers of the same language in different states, and the degree of spatial cohesion among speakers. But there are also other perspectives that intervene with the language contact, which are demography, sociology, linguistics, and psychology. With all this language contact, some limitations emerge. Edwards mentions two main methods to solve those language gaps. The first one, lingua franca, is the language of wider communication in a community, and translation that involves interpretation and judgments. But what are or have been some of the misunderstandings about bilingualism and multilingualism? May happen that some individuals in a bilingual or multilingual society are not bilingual or multilingual. Way says this phenomenon occurs because of the learner internal factors. They are age, gender, and personality. Age, as the critical period hypothesis claims that there is an ideal age to acquire languages. However, many researchers don't believe in the existence of this period. Instead, they think it is a matter of attitude, motivation, input, and interaction. Gender, as a sociocultural effect that is closely related to the different roles of girls and boys, or women and men, in a society. And personality intervenes in the relative success or failure in second language learning, since outgoing people tend to acquire the language better than shy people. Researchers around bilingualism and multilingualism are concerned about aspects such as types of bilinguals. Wainwright proposed three types of bilinguals: coordinate, when the individual learns the language separately in separate environments and keeps this separation after mastering both languages; the compound bilingual, these individuals learn the language in the same environment and context, and they are used simultaneously or interchangeably; and the subordinate bilingual, this individual uses the stronger language to interpret the weaker language. But Porter proposed a theory in which bilingual lexical knowledge could be represented in bilinguals' mind through two models: the word association model and the concept mediation model. The first one is similar to the subordinate bilingualism that I mentioned before, and to understand a second language word, it is necessary to associate it with the first language word. In the concept mediation model, there is no lexical connection between both languages, so both words, the first language word and the second language word, are connected with the same concept independently, so there is no literal translation here. But then Kroll and Stewart proposed the hierarchical model, which represents concepts mediation and word association not as different models, but as alternative routes within the same model. According to this, in the early stages of the second language acquisition, words are learned relating them with the meaning in the first language. And as learners acquire more knowledge and fluency in the second language, words begin to be associated with the concept. Another important issue for research on bilingualism and multilingualism is how these individuals acquire the first language. There is a debate around if bilingual children begin with a fused linguistic system and gradually they differentiate the two languages, or if they start with a differentiated system. So the question here is, what is the evidence for differentiation or fusion? Volterra and Teschner based their decision on whether the child spoke the right language to the right person. However, McLaughlin said that bilingual children separate the languages when they are aware there are two systems. Other studies focus on the structural constraints of lexical borrowing, diffusion, and code switching in language contact. There are two contrasting positions. One position assumes that bilingual individual has two discrete grammatical systems. Usually one of the grammars is more dominant, and another position rejects this. They say that bilingual users' grammar knowledge should include also the knowledge of how different grammatical systems interact with each other. They say that borrowing, diffusion, and switching are linguistic strategies used in different ways, different situations, for different purposes. But what does it mean to be bilingual or multilingual? It is the result of languages in contact. People using different languages that establish contact with one another. Way mentions three cases of societal bilingualism and multilingualism. The territorial, where people are in the same politically and geographically defining territories, and languages are protected by legislation. Example of this, Canada, India, Spain, and Switzerland. The diglossia occurs when two languages coexist in the same space, but one of them has more status than the other. So people use one language for familiar or informal situations, while the other one for formal contexts. For example, Guarani versus Spanish in Paraguay. And the widespread multilingualism occurs when groups of people with a native language of indigenous ethnic groups coexist with one or more languages of wider communication. An example of this here in Colombia, we have the Embera Chami community. The majority of these communities are highly multilingual. There are differences between those who become bilingual informally and those who become bilingual in a self-consciously way. Some refers to folk bilingualism. People have to become bilingual involuntarily in order to survive. There is no choice, so they have to learn it. And the elite bilingualism, in which language is a matter of choice. There may be individuals with some aptitude for learning a second language. They have good memory, good ear, and capacity for self-initiated. Findings show a positive relationship between intelligence and bilingualism, and recent evidence suggests that particular strengths are associated with bilingualism. It improves cognitive functions. Bilingual children solve certain tasks quicker than monolingual. even that bilingual competence may ameliorate symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. The negative consequences observed are connected with social, personal, and cultural factors, but not with the bilingualism process itself. Thank you very much.